what that means, folks. It's time to build a beautiful, efficient cottage.
Let's go!
On the last episode, we installed our wall panels, our roof trusses, and our steel roof. Now it's time for the next steps. Interior framing, electrical, plumbing, wrapping the house, all of the things that will help us get to the finishing stages. What we're doing is we're gluing together the king stud and the jack stud. And what are they? Well, this longer piece of wood is going to go all the way from the floor up to where the lumber is at the top plate of the wall. And then this shorter piece will hold our beam that goes above the window. We got to add a little bit of framing on the side, which carries all of the roof load. All right, now we've got all of our walls up, we've got our roofing on, so this place is somewhat dry. We got to close in the last of these openings. I've taken out the temporary legs that are holding the roof nice and straight, and we're going to be installing our standard jack and king posts. So I'm going to need to recess the foam in the wall panel a little bit deeper to handle taking both of these, because we've got a large wall and a large opening. Once we get these installed, we measure down from the top of that jack down 5 feet. That's our window height. Then we can cut ourselves a nice section of wall panel that will fit right in between that with one plate on the top. We're done. And we just have to finish off the top above the beam with some standard framing and then pack the back side of it with foam. It's gonna be so nice. Hey, don't laugh, okay? We're gonna pack the back with it and fill her up. Hi, welcome to What's Cooking with Colin. Today we're serving up a nicely closed-in cottage. To do that, we're gonna need our spray foam gun, our nail gun to fasten all of the wooden panels together, and the hot knife. The hot knife is the tool of choice when it comes to recessing anything in these EPS foam panels. This represents the shape of a 2x8. It's also the width of our panel. Look at that. If we need to add another 2x8 into that panel, it's as easy as a hot knife through butter. Perfect 1.5 inch thickness. All right, we've had our septic system installed, our tank's down by the cottage, our bed's up here, and we oversized this system. We made it so that in the future, someone can add one full bathroom. We do that because you never know what's gonna happen in the future. Someone might add a bunkie or something and wanna have a washroom and a shower in it. And also, when do you ever need a septic system that's one size too small? We would have to rip all of this up and start again if we wanted to add one bathroom. So better to make it big now, and then in the future, we've got what we need. It's also ready for big parties, right, Jillian?
Also, an amazing thing about this septic system is the fact that it's away from the lake. They've positioned it so that it works in tandem with the slanted bedrock, so that if anything were ever to happen, there was a big torrential downpour, everything would flow away from the lake, not damaging this precious water supply.
Gosh, that sounded nice.
So we're with Techno Metal Post. We install helical piles for foundations, decks, pretty much any structure. Today we're drilling P3s, which are 3-inch helical piers. We brought in the EM1, which is one of our bigger machines, which we use for most of the jobs up north because the terrain is unpredictable. We had a smaller machine in here before, the R2D. However, a couple of the posts are right beside big trees, so we couldn't really chop through the roots. So we brought in the EM1. We drilled down to a set pressure, which shows on the machine. And once that shows up, then we stop drilling, remove the machine, cut the posts at the desired height. Usually we use a laser level, get them all the same height. And then we have saddles which sit into the posts, and then they put their wood on top of them and they build their structure in and out.
So the cool thing about the Muskoka room is that it's got its own thing going on over here, of course. It won't be an extension of the beautiful cement slab we've got over here, as we have to think about the fact that we are in a cool climate here in the Muskoka region. So once it hits freezing, the cement slab would heave up from the ground. So it's really awesome. It's gonna have its own vibe over here. It's gonna feel really, really cottage-esque.
I'm gonna start laying out the base plates for our timber frame porch. We've had our screw piles installed, but I need to set the height of them. They're all in the same spot width and lengthwise. I'm gonna dictate the height, cut the posts off. Once the posts are cut, we just drop our base plate in and start framing. Put the posts on, put the beams on. Bob's your uncle. What does that mean? He's not my uncle. I guess that's why he's your uncle. Doing our house wrap here. This helps let airflow and also keeps the moisture out of the house. Right now I'm just gonna run it right across all the windows so that the flooring guys can put some heat on today. That'll help their sealant dry.
Canada is true north, strong and free, right? But it's also one of the worst in energy consumption. It's actually rated in the top 10 of worst countries for energy use. And we use a lot of energy sources that are also non-renewable. We're kind of addicted to gasoline, right? Fun fact about gasoline, 1975 to 1980, gas prices skyrocketed, which is why a bunch of smart people came together to build the first passive house. Funnily enough, the EU continued that trend, and they still do today, but apparently we're still kind of catching on.
I got an email. I found a nice HRV, heat recovery ventilation thing. It basically exchanges the inside air temperature with outside air coming in so that when we do have air circulating from outside to in, we're at least taking some of the heat from the indoor air and putting it into the air that's coming in. And so I found a brand new HRV on a secondhand website, but it's brand new, but it doesn't meet the efficiencies we need. Craig just said to me, hey Colin, that one's got a pretty low efficiency for a high performance place. 75%. Typical in a passive house project, you want at least above 80%. The best way to tell the difference is through energy modeling. It can also really affect the heating load, which may mean that you need a larger heating unit. So we're at the point now where we really need to put this building into energy modeling software and have my buddy Craig decide what size of a heating unit do we need, what sort of a HRV or ERV system do we need to exchange the air within the place. Now that he's got the numbers on the windows and we know exactly what we've used for the walls, the floor, and what we're using for the roof, we can get a final number on those things. It's been extra easy installing these walls because I'm not having to shoehorn them in between the bottom plate and the top where the trusses are. And the reason that I don't is because I'm actually going to slip in a full entire OSB ceiling after the fact. I've got a regular vapor barrier up there, and that's really just to satisfy the building inspector and meet building codes. But we're going to use a thin 7/16 OSB board up there, and we're going to seal all of the joints just like we did the SIP panels. For the air tightness, we use that acoustic seal, that black stuff, and you get it on your clothes, then it's all of a sudden it's on your car, and then you've ruined your wife's blouse when you get home. It's kind of the devil, but it's also key to sealing up this house. I've acoustic sealed behind each one of these joints, and then just covered it with tape so that we don't get it on ourselves. So the reason that we're doing a wall here is because this is our kitchen. We're gonna have our hood range here. We've got an area to mount receptacles, and over here we've got a wall anyway, so I'm not building out most of the walls like in the bedrooms, adding another entire wall. We're just gonna build out the baseboard for a receptacle, but this allows us to plumb the kitchen just like we want. We could add a pot filler here if we wanted. It's on the warm side of the wall. So when we assembled the panels, we took great care to make sure that we were spray foaming the panels to one another and to the key that goes in between the panels. So it should be pretty airtight as is. We then screwed the heck out of the panels. Now what we're doing is the last step of putting acoustical sealant on all the joints on the entire building, everywhere. We want this thing to be airtight. So that means I'm gonna smear a coat down this seam, and then when I install the vapor barrier on the ceiling, I'll also put a nice big smear along here. This stuff is super sticky. Putting a generous coating, then I'm gonna put tape over top of that and smear it in even more. This is stuff that you can do even if you don't have a passive house. You know, before the winter time comes, if you seal up all your baseboards to the floor and everywhere in your house is sealed, you're gonna save a lot of money on energy. It's better to have an airtight building envelope than a gappy, leaky, well-insulated envelope. We come all the way down to the bottom here. This wrap is on top of the insulation, but under the concrete. It comes right around the edge of the building, wraps under the wall and back up. So I'm gonna put a nice big bead along here, and then gonna do another second row above that, because why not? Just block that off a few times in case, it's like the Titanic, you do different chambers so it definitely doesn't sink. Then we're gonna seal right underneath there, so that basically there's no way that air can get the heck out of here. And when we put our drywall on there, I'm gonna make sure that I put a bunch of extra screws in here and screw that nice and tight so it's really stuck on there. And this stuff never dries. Like 50 years from now, you'll still be able to be like, yeah, that's sticky. So there's this chipmunk that's been hanging out and eating my lunch all the time. Got in again. I just saw him. Look at that. He took a bite out of every piece. What a guy. Yeah, I put up all the framing myself. It's been going pretty good. I hope to have most of it done by today, and then what I'll have to do, I still have to figure out where all the door openings are and which door is going where. So I'll pre-do a bunch of the cuts for on top of the door openings and also the jack, which holds the piece that goes above the door. So I'll need, you know, I think there's 13 doors plus some closets and stuff. So it'll be like 26 jack studs and then like 35 pieces for above. And I'll set up a jig and do that streamline, bang the frames together, pop them in, and then cut out the plate like I've already done here. I've cut the plate out where the wall will go, but I just leave them all in and do that afterwards, and that gives me a bit of time to think about it while I'm actually looking at it. Where do we want the door? Windows are in different places than when we first designed it, because I said to the guys who did the panels, we'll keep the windows 4 feet. So if the panel ends up being like a foot this way, a foot that way in a bedroom, it doesn't matter as long as it's got the window there. So I need to say, okay, well, where does the bed go? Where should the door be? But that's the type of thing, you just chill, you relax, you walk around, you envision yourself living there. It's nice to do things on paper, but we've got 3 sets of paper so far, you know, different drawings that have changed. And I try and allow some things to be flexible where it doesn't matter, and where it does matter, I'm kind of hard on that, but we can make it work. That was a good long rant. I know what you guys are thinking. This job site has a lot of studs on it. Get your eyes off my wood! Don't put that in. You know, it'll be the one plug to me from the top of there. There's 3 plugs on each side. So basically the lighting plan is up to you and me. We get to decide what's good value and what makes sense to do. We've got a realtor coming in this afternoon, and she's gonna give us a bit of advice on how much this place might be worth once we try to sell it, and that will dictate the level of finishing and how fancy we need to get. We got a panel that's big enough for all of our needs, and then some.
We have to start with somewhere.
Might as well start with a great big panel. How many circuits you got in that thing?
Only 60.
Most cottages back in the day had like 8. Did they give you any breakage or anything, or no? Does it come loaded? No? I thought that's like the way the value savings is to buy them preloaded or something.
Yeah, but that would price would be huge.
Really?
And you would look at it.
Oh,
and say,
you'd
no,
need
I don't
all.
want
Did they
it.
give you all 60?
Yeah, that's back in the day. But now it's all those arc faults, buddy.
Arc faults, expensive breakers. However, they save lives. I'll just jump up on the ladder and... I know why they call it oriented. What is it, oriented strand board? It's because it looks outstranding. Anyways, it's affordable. Now we're about to mount the panel to the wall. We just mounted some board and we will be placing the panel onto it. The hydrometer is mounted onto a post out there. We've ran the secondary conductor under the ground. In some spots we had to put concrete over it to protect it. Then it came into a big O-pipe from the side of the building underneath, and it will be coming up and into the panel. We have to then wait. The electrical inspector is going to come. He's going to make sure that that's wired in properly and that there's a proper ground plate attached and wired in. And from that point on, I got to hurry up and finish my framing so that Jeff can get all this wiring in.
You not done yet?
What a guy. All right, so we've got our 6mm poly installed on the ceilings, but that's mostly just to satisfy the building department and the Ontario Building Code. Our real concern is air tightness, and we're gonna solve that issue by installing 7/16 OSB all over the entire ceiling. We're gonna seal every joint with acoustic sealant, and we're gonna tape over every joint as well. That's gonna give us the air tightness that we need to achieve under our 0.6 air changes per hour.
Let's go!